The metal door screamed, a rusty shriek that scraped Arthur's bones. It rolled up with a final shuddering slam, locking into place and revealing not a gold mine, not a treasure, but a tomb. The air that hit them was cold, dead, and smelled of mothballs, cheap vinyl, and something sour, like spoiled milk. Dust motes, thick as velvet, danced in the single bare bulb flickering above. Arthur Larson, 76 years old, leaned on his cane. The $200 he'd just spent, their entire grocery budget for the month, feeling like a stone in his gut. Before him stood a cardboard cutout of Elvis Presley, circa 1973, white jumpsuit, arms outstretched, a ghostly white smile plastered on his face. Behind him, stacked to the ceiling, were boxes and boxes of a life Arthur wanted no part of. "Oh, Arthur," Eleanor, his wife, whispered beside him, her small, gloved hand finding his arm. "What have you done?" "Wait, before you see what's inside. If this story already has your heart pounding, tell us where you're watching from. When forgotten boxes open, when second chances hide under dust and debt, subscribe and stay close. You'll never guess what's been left behind. Now, back to the lock clicking open." Arthur didn't answer. He couldn't. He just limped past the smiling king, his bad hip protesting the cold. The unit was a 10 by 20 coffin of obsession. White jumpsuits, stained with sweat and what looked like ketchup, hung limply on wire mannequins. A pyramid of 8-track tapes, all of them Elvis, listed dangerously to the left. A black velvet painting of Graceland, peeling at the corners, was propped against a stack of warped vinyl. It was pathetic. It was the hoard of a man who had died, or worse, just walked away and let it all rot. And now it was theirs, all of it. The junk, the smell, the failure. Start at the front, Elle," Arthur said, his voice trying for a strength it hadn't possessed in years. "We'll see what's what. Maybe one of these records is worth something." Eleanor nodded, her face pale. She was 74, a bird-like woman who deserved a warm condo in Florida, not a freezing storage unit in nowhere, Ohio. She deserved better than him, better than this last desperate gamble on a dead man's garbage. They'd been driven to this by the hospital bills, by the predatory reverse mortgage, by the sheer grinding humiliation of being old and poor in a country that didn't care. The auctions were supposed to be a lifeline. So far, they'd bought 2 units. One held a broken lawnmower and 3 boxes of damp tax returns. This one held the ghost of a bad lounge singer. Eleanor stepped carefully over a box labeled "King Scarves," assorted. She was a tidy person. This chaos pained her physically. She moved deeper into the unit, toward the back wall, where the shadows were thickest. Arthur was already trying to lift a heavy crate of what looked like plastic-wrapped T-shirts, grunting with the effort. "Arthur, be careful, your back," she murmured, not looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on something else. In the very back, half hidden behind a tilting stack of TV guide magazines from the 1970s, was a trunk. It was different from everything else. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't Elvis. It was a simple, olive-green military footlocker, the kind Arthur remembered from his own brief, unremarkable stint in the service. It was dented, scratched, and secured with a small, brassy padlock that was green with verdigris. "Arthur," she said again, her voice sharper this time, "leave that. Come look at this." He hobbled over, wiping his dusty hands on his thin coat. "What is it?" "It doesn't belong," she whispered. She ran a finger over the stenciled name on the side, but it was too faded to read. "It's locked." Arthur looked at the lock. It was cheap. He pulled a small multi-tool from his pocket. a gift from their son-in-law decades ago. Before. He worked the thin metal file into the keyhole. He jiggled it. The lock was stubborn, frozen with rust and time. "Just break it," Ellie said, her voice tight. Arthur found a tire iron in a nearby box of car parts. Why were there car parts? And wedged it into the hasp. He put his frail weight into it. The metal screamed, a thin, painful sound. It snapped. The lock fell to the concrete with a dull clatter. For a moment, they just stared at the trunk, breathing in the cold, dead air. The cardboard Elvis smiled over Arthur's shoulder, a silent, sequined witness. "Well," Arthur said, "open it." Eleanor's hands trembled. She lifted the heavy lid. The hinges groaned in protest. The smell that rose from the trunk was different. Not just mothballs. There was cedar. There was lavender. Faint, but there. The top layer was a man's clothing, but not jumpsuits. A simple, worn flannel shirt. A pair of faded jeans. Underneath, a smaller box. A cigar box. Ellie opened it. Inside, a few grainy photos of a man in an Elvis jumpsuit, posing with tourists on a street corner. He was handsome in a cheap, hollow-eyed way. "Johnny King Costello," one photo was captioned on the back. So that was his name. There was also a tarnished silver lighter and a single, child-sized blue suede shoe. Clearly a prop. "Just more of his junk," Arthur said, relieved and disappointed at the same time. He started to turn away. "No," Ellie said. Her voice was thin, like shattered glass. "Arthur, wait!" She was lifting something from beneath the flannel shirt. It was a bundle, wrapped in a large, heavy piece of faded, waxy oilcloth and tied with a simple cotton string. It was heavy. She set it on her lap, perching on a stack of records, her knees cracking in protest. The string, brittle with age, crumbled under her fingernail. She unfolded the cloth. Not costumes, not gold records. Letters. A thick stack of them, maybe 2 or 3 dozen, all in their envelopes. The envelopes were cheap, the kind you buy in a box of 50, and they were addressed in a looping, left-leaning cursive. Addressed to Johnny King Costello, C.O. The Silver Saddle, Reno, NV. But it wasn't the address C that made Eleanor's heart stop. It wasn't the Reno address. It was the return address. It was the handwriting. She hadn't seen that precise, careful loop on the S or the sharp, determined cross of the T in 40 years. Not since the last screaming fight. Not since the slammed door. Not since the note on the kitchen table that just said, "I'm sorry. Don't look for me." Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, a sharp, painful gasp. The dust she inhaled made her cough, a dry, racking sound that echoed off the metal walls. "Elle, what is it? You're white as a sheet." Arthur knelt beside her, his bad knee popping. She couldn't speak. She could only hold one up, her entire body shaking, a tremor that started in her soul and radiated out to her fingertips. "Arthur," she finally whispered, the word tearing from her throat. "Look, just look." He took the letter. He squinted at the return address. His own hands began to shake. "No," he said. It was a statement, not a question. "It's hers," Ellie wept, the first tears cutting clean, bright tracks through the dust on her cheeks. It's Sarah's. It's ours," Sarah's handwriting. The cardboard Elvis smiled. The single bulb buzzed. And in the frozen, forgotten tomb of a dead impersonator, Arthur and Eleanor Larson stared at the ghost of their long-lost daughter. The world contracted to the 10 by 20 space. The traffic outside, the shouts of the auctioneer moving to the next unit, the cold, it all dissolved. There was only the concrete floor, the smell of vinyl, and the brittle, cream-colored envelope in Arthur's hand. "Sarah," he said, the name like rust in his mouth. They're not to us, Eleanor whispered, her mind struggling to connect the pieces. They're to him, this. This Johnny King fellow. Arthur's jaw tightened. He looked at the grinning, hollow-eyed man in the photo. He looked at the tacky, sweat-stained jumpsuit. This was the man their daughter had run to. Or with. "Open it, Arthur," Ellie said. "Read it." His fingers, thick with arthritis and a lifetime of manual labor, fumbled with the flap. The paper was so dry it threatened to crack. He slid the single folded sheet out. He unfolded it. The date at the top was 39 years old. Dearest Johnny, I made it to Reno. The bus ride was awful. My back is killing me. The lady at the bus station depot told me about a shelter, the one you said to go to. It's clean. It's not home, but it's clean. I hope you're getting this. I'm at the address you gave me for the mail drop. Please come soon. I'm scared, Johnny. I'm so scared. I haven't told my parents. I can't. Not after what Daddy said. He'd just hate me more. I love you. Please come soon. Yours, Sarah. Eleanor let out a sound, a low, animal wail of grief that was ripped from her chest. She doubled over, pressing her face into the musty flannel shirt from the trunk. Arthur just sat, frozen, the letter shaking in his grip. The words. What Daddy said. He remembered. Oh, God, he remembered every single terrible word. The fight about the boy, not this one, another one. The missed curfew, the accusations. The tough love his own father had raised him with. He'd called her. He couldn't even think the word. And she'd left. There's more, Ellie said, her voice muffled. She was holding the bundle, pulling another letter from the stack. They're all returned to sender, Arthur. Look, the stamps. Addressee unknown. No such person at this address. She ripped another one open, then another, their history spilling out onto the dusty floor. The letters painted a desperate, lonely portrait. Johnny, it's been 3 weeks. Where are you? The shelter says I can't stay much longer. I saw a poster for you, The King Returns, at some bar called the Silver Saddle. I went. They said you'd left. They said you'd gone on tour. Why didn't you tell me? Johnny, I'm at a new place, a rooming house. It's not nice. The baby is kicking. It's a boy. I think he's a boy. Please, I need you. I'm running out of money. Mr. Costello, I don't know why you're not answering. I'm at the hospital, St. Mary's. The baby is coming. I put your name down. I'm telling them you're my husband. Please, Johnny, don't make me a liar. Arthur got to his feet. He walked to the smiling cardboard Elvis and, with a roar of pure 40-year-old anguish, he punched it. The cardboard folded, the smiling face ripping in two. He tore at it, ripping the sequins, the white fabric, until it was just a pile of shredded paper at his feet. "Arthur!" Ellie screamed. He turned, breathing heavily, his chest aching. He left her, he growled. That worm. He left her alone. Pregnant and alone. Arthur, come back. There's one more. It's not a letter. He stumbled back to her, his rage spent, leaving only a vast, cold emptiness. Ellie was holding a different document. It was folded, official, and it was inside a different envelope, along with 2 other items. She handed him the first. It wasn't a letter. It was a death certificate. Name, Sarah Ann Larson. Date of death, October 14th, 1995. 10 years ago, Arthur calculated, his mind numb. Cause of death, complications from pneumonia. Age, 29. They had outlived their daughter by a decade and had never even known she was gone. They had been setting a place for her at Thanksgiving, a stubborn, hopeful ritual, For 10 years after she'd been buried in a pauper's grave. "Oh, God," Arthur whispered, sinking to his knees, the pain in his hip nothing compared to the void that had just opened up inside him. "Oh, my sweet girl, we weren't." "Hush," Ellie said, her own tears flowing silently. She was holding the other 2 items. "Arthur, look, she didn't die alone." She handed him the first, a crisp, official-looking birth certificate from Washoe County, Nevada. Name, Daniel Larson. Date of birth, February 12, 1987. Mother, Sarah Ann Larson. Father, Jonathan Costello. "Daniel," Ellie breathed, testing the name. She had him. She had the baby. "Daniel, we had a grandson. He'd be, what, 18? 19? Arthur said, his mind struggling with the math. "Older," Ellie said. She was holding the last item, a photograph. Not a grainy snapshot, but a professional photo. A high school graduation picture, still in its paper folder. A young man, maybe 17 or 18, in a blue cap and gown, holding a diploma. He was smiling, a slightly shy, awkward smile. He wasn't handsome in the flashy, cheap way of Johnny King. He was solid, and he had, unmistakably, Eleanor's clear, kind eyes and the stubborn set of Arthur's jaw. Tucked into the folder was a small handwritten note, not from Sarah. The handwriting was different. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I kept these for you. Johnny, he was a no-good bum. He passed, drank himself to death. Must be 93. I found this trunk in his things. I tried to find you. By the time I did, you were already so sick. I'm leaving these in the unit, with your things, the one you paid for. I'm so sorry. Marge, Silver Saddle. A bartender, maybe? A friend?" And then another note, this one in Sarah's hand, on the back of the photo. "My Danny, graduating. He did it. I'm so proud. I wish I could show Mom and Dad. They'd be so proud." She paid for this unit, Ellie realized, looking around at the Elvis junk. This was her unit, not his. She must have taken his things after he died. Or maybe that Marge did. And she kept this trunk here. Her own things. Her memories of Daniel. But the unit was auctioned, Arthur said, the horrific logistics clicking into place. The payments, when she died, the payments must have stopped 10 years ago. For 10 years, their daughter's dying wish, the evidence of their grandson, had been sitting in this cold, dark box, waiting for the payments to stop, waiting for the lock to be cut, waiting for them. "He's out there, Arthur," Ellie said. She gripped his arm, her small fingers surprisingly strong. "That photo, it was 10 years ago. He'd be 28. He's a man, a grown man. We have a grandson. He's alive." Arthur looked at the smiling, hopeful face of the boy in the photo. Daniel, his grandson, a boy who had been raised likely in foster care, a boy who had graduated high school alone, a boy who thought his mother's family had abandoned him just as he'd thought his father had. He looked at the shredded cardboard Elvis. He looked at the worthless, tacky jumpsuits. We have to find him," Ellie said, her voice a steel blade. "We have to tell him." "How, Elle?" Arthur said, the weight of the world crushing him. "It's been 10 years. Larson, it's a common name. Daniel Larson. In Reno? He could be anywhere in the world." "I don't care," Eleanor said, getting to her feet with a grace he hadn't seen in years. She was no longer a frail old woman. She was a grandmother. "We're not leaving him. We left his mother. We are not leaving him." She grabbed the oilcloth bundle, the letters, the certificates, the photo, and clutched it to her chest as if it were a living thing. "What about all this?" Arthur gestured uselessly at the piles of junk. "The $200. "It's trash," Ellie said, walking past the velvet Graceland, her back straight. "All of it. It's just trash." Arthur looked at the unit one last time. The smiling, ripped face of the king. The cold. The dust. He was wrong. It wasn't trash. It was a map. He hobbled out after his wife, pulling the screaming metal door down. It slammed shut, plunging the unit back into darkness. But for Arthur and Ellie, a light had just been switched on. They sat in the cab of their 1998 Ford Ranger, the engine off, the silence ringing. The sun was setting, painting the corrugated metal of the storage facility in shades of orange and blood. Neither of them spoke. Ellie just held the bundle in her lap. Arthur stared at the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "What she must have thought of us," Arthur said, his voice a dry rasp. "Hush," Ellie said. She was proud. She wrote it. They'd be so proud. "What Daddy said," Arthur quoted, the words like acid. I drove her to him, Elle, to that phony." "You were scared," Ellie said, her voice flat, emotionless. "You were scared for her. You used the wrong words." "I used a shovel, Elle. I buried her with those words." "No," she said, turning to him. Her eyes were fiery. "She's not buried. She's right here." She tapped the bundle. "And so is he, Daniel. He's not a ghost, Arthur. He's a man, and we're going to find him." "How?" he asked again, the practical, crushing reality of their situation setting in. We have $800 in the bank. That's it. That's the mortgage payment and the electric. Reno, it's 2,000 miles. "Then we'd better get started," she said. She wasn't asking. They drove home. Their bungalow, once a source of pride, felt like a cage. It was too quiet. Every object mocked them. The empty chair at the kitchen table, the hallway that led to Sarah's room. Arthur hadn't been in that room in maybe 15 years. Ellie kept it clean, but he couldn't bear it. It was still painted a pale, optimistic yellow. Her high school pennants were still on the wall. A few stuffed animals, their fur matted with age, sat on her single bed. He walked in, his cane thudding on the hardwood. He sat on the bed. The mattress springs creaked. He saw her desk, her textbooks, her diary. He'd never read it. He'd never dared. Ellie came in and sat beside him. She placed the oilcloth bundle on the quilt. "We sell the truck," she said. "Elle, it's all we have." "It's not. We have this." She touched the photo. "We sell the truck. We use the money for a bus ticket, both of us. And then what? We show up in Reno, broke, and what? Knock on doors? We go to the Silver Saddle. We find that Marge woman. We go to the county records office. We find him." Arthur looked around the room, at the relics of a life he had failed to protect. He thought of the $200, the worst investment of his life, and the best. "No," he said, standing. "We're not selling the truck. It's old, but it's strong. It'll make it. Arthur, the gas." "I'll sell the tools," he said. This stopped her. His tools. His father's tools. The snap-on ratchet set he'd saved for a year to buy. The drill press. They were his only remaining connection to the man he'd been. A man who could fix things. "Arthur, no, not your tools." "They're just things, Elle," he said, the words echoing her own from the storage unit. "They're just metal. He's blood." He went to the garage. He didn't sleep. He polished every tool. He laid them out on a clean tarp. He put a for sale sign in the yard. By morning, a young mechanic from down the street had bought the lot for $1,500. Arthur watched his drill press get loaded into another man's truck, and he felt light. "What about the Elvis stuff?" Ellie asked, packing a single small suitcase. "Let him keep it," Arthur said. "The auctioneer can have it back. I don't care." "No," Ellie said, a small, shrewd light in her eye. "It's our junk. We paid for it. We've got the key." She made a call. An hour later, a man in a van that said "Nostalgia Now" showed up. He'd met him at the auctions, a reseller. He walked into the unit, which they'd left open. He whistled. "Wow, the mother lode! A whole King collection." "Johnny Costello's? You know him?" Arthur asked, his stomach tightening. "Knew of him. Local legend. Total train wreck. Never made it big. His stuff, though, it's got a certain kitsch. I'll give you $400 for the lot. Cash." $600, Ellie said, not blinking. "5, and I clean it out," the man said. "Done," Ellie said. He counted out $500 bills into her hand. She folded them and put them in her purse. They had $2,300. They had a full tank of gas. They had a box of letters. They locked their house. They didn't know if they'd be back. They didn't know if the bank would take it while they were gone. They didn't care. Arthur eased the old Ranger onto the highway, pointing it west. Ohio faded in the rearview mirror. The road was a ribbon of asphalt that stretched into an uncertain future. For 2 days they drove. They talked more than they had in 20 years. They didn't just talk about Sarah. They talked to her. They apologized. They wept. In the cab of that truck, passing through the flat, endless cornfields of Indiana and Illinois, Arthur finally told Ellie the full story of the fight, the words he'd used, the shame he'd felt, the pride that had kept him from running after her. I told her she was no good," Arthur confessed, his voice breaking, his eyes fixed on the road. "I told her she'd end up just like my brother, a drunk, a failure. I said, if you walk out that door, don't you ever come back." "Oh, Arthur," Ellie wept, her hand on his arm. "And she just looked at me. Not angry, just broken. And she said, 'I'm not him, Daddy. I'm just me. And I'm sorry that's not good enough.' And she left. And I let her go." "She forgave you, Arthur," Ellie said. "It's in the letter. They'd be so proud. She knew we loved her." "We have to tell him," Arthur said. "We have to tell Daniel we were the ones who were wrong." They crossed the Mississippi, the water a muddy brown reminder of how much time had passed. In Nebraska, the truck's alternator died, just died, at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. Arthur sat in the driver's seat, his head on the steering wheel, defeated. "That's it, Elle. We're done." "No, we're not." Ellie got out of the truck. She walked over to a trucker who was filling up his rig. She explained. She didn't cry. She just told him the truth. "We're going to Reno to find our grandson. Our truck is broken." The trucker, a big man with a kind face, looked at them. He looked at their Ohio plates, at the desperation in their eyes. He spent an hour under their hood. He had a spare alternator. He said it was close enough. He installed it. When Arthur tried to pay him, he just shook his head. "My mama always said, what goes around comes around. You find that boy. You hear me?" They drove on. The plains gave way to the high desert. The mountains rose in the distance, purple and magnificent. They slept in the truck at rest stops, Ellie curled up against the door, Arthur stiff and aching in the driver's seat. They ate crackers and peanut butter. They were pioneers, chasing a new life, a new frontier, fueled by nothing but regret and a fragile, terrifying hope. On the fourth day, they crested a hill and saw the lights. Reno. It glittered in the valley, a gaudy, desperate jewel. It wasn't hard to find the silver saddle. It was on a side street, its neon sign flickering, a cowboy boot with a broken spur. The place smelled of stale beer and old cigarettes. It was dark, even in the middle of the day. They sat at the bar. A woman with hair the color of nicotine and a face like a road map was wiping down the counter. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice like gravel. We're looking for someone," Ellie said, her voice small. "A woman named March. She used to work here." The woman's eyes narrowed. She put the rag down. "I'm March." "Who's asking?" Ellie's hand flew to her chest. You're Marge." She opened her purse and pulled out the small note that had been tucked in the photo. She slid it across the bar. Marge picked it up. She read it. Her face, so hard a moment ago, crumpled. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Sarah, you're her folks? From Ohio?" "Yes," Ellie said, tears welling. I thought you'd passed," Marge said. She always said her parents were gone, a long time ago." "She thought we were," Arthur said, his voice thick. We just found the letters in the storage unit. We bought it by accident." "The storage unit?" Marge said, shaking her head. I paid for it after she passed, for as long as I could. I had to let it go, about 6 months back. The bank, I couldn't. I am so sorry. You knew her?" Arthur interrupted, desperate. "You knew our Sarah?" "Knew her?" Marge let out a sad laugh. "Honey, I loved her. She was a sweet girl. The only good thing that ever walked into this place. Too good for that bum Johnny. Lord, he was a piece of work. Drank himself into the grave. Left her with Danny." "Danny," Ellie breathed. "Daniel. Do you know him? Do you know where he is?" Marge's face darkened. "I did. For a while. After Sarah. After she passed. He went into the system. Foster care. I tried to get him, but, a single woman, working in a bar, they wouldn't let me. I lost track. He'd be grown now." Arthur's heart sank. A dead end. The system. He could be anywhere. "But," Marge said, snapping her fingers, "but he used to come by when he aged out. He'd just sit at the bar, drink a Coke, ask questions about his mom, about Johnny. I think I have an address. He was working at a garage over on 4th Street. Let me look." She disappeared into a back room. Arthur and Ellie held their breath. The jukebox in the corner started playing an old Patsy Cline song. Marge came back, holding a greasy napkin. "Here," she said. It's at least a year old. A garage, Honest Dan's Auto, and this, an apartment. I don't know if it's still good." Ellie took the napkin as if it were a holy relic. "Thank you," she wept. "God bless you." "You find him," Marge said, her voice stern, her eyes wet. You tell him, Marge said hi, and you tell him his mama was an angel." "We will," Arthur promised. Honest Dan's Auto was a small, 2-bay garage in a rougher part of town. A sign, hand-painted, hung crookedly over the door. Arthur and Ellie parked the Ranger across the street. "What do we say?" Arthur asked, his hands shaking so hard he couldn't turn off the ignition. We say, hello," Ellie said. They got out. They walked across the street. A young man in greasy blue coveralls was leaning over the open hood of a car, a wrench in his hand. He had dark, curly hair matted with sweat. "Be with you in a minute," he called out, not looking up. We're looking for Daniel Larson," Ellie said. The man stopped. He slowly straightened up. He turned. It was him. It was the face in the photo, 10 years older. He was taller, broader, but the eyes were Eleanor's, clear, kind, and right now very, very confused. "I'm Daniel," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Can I help you? You folks look lost." Arthur couldn't speak. His throat was closed. Ellie stepped forward, her hands trembling, holding the oilcloth bundle. She'd carried it all the way from Ohio. "Daniel Larson?" she said. "Yeah," he said, his eyes narrowing, cautious. "Who are you?" Ellie's voice broke. We found this in a storage unit. We're Sarah's parents. We were your grandparents." Daniel's face went blank. The wrench in his hand clattered to the oily concrete. "My mother?" he said, the words sounding foreign. "My grandparents? No, that's not possible. My mom, she said her parents were gone." "She thought we were," Arthur managed to say, stepping forward, his cane clicking on the pavement. And we thought she was. We were wrong, son. We've been wrong for 40 years. We just found the letters." Daniel looked at the bundle. He looked at Arthur's face. He looked at Ellie's. He saw his own eyes looking back at him. "Letters?" he whispered. Ellie unfolded the oilcloth and held out the top letter, the one from Sarah. "Dearest Johnny, I'm scared." Daniel took it. He read it. He took another and another. He sank onto the running board of the car, his greasy hands now trembling, holding the story of his own birth. She wrote this," he said, looking up at them, his eyes wide with a lifetime of questions. "She did," Ellie said, kneeling on the dirty floor beside him. She loved you, Daniel. She loved you so much." I don't remember her," he said, his voice thick. I was just a kid. I have this one picture, that's all." "We have more," Arthur said. We have her room, back home. We have us." Daniel looked at the two old people before him, strangers, his blood. They had crossed a continent, chasing a ghost, fueled by a 40-year-old mistake. I get off in an hour," he said, his voice raw. "Well, wait," Arthur said. There's someone I want you to meet." They didn't wait at the garage. Daniel gave them an address, an apartment complex, not far. "Number 2B, he'd said. "Just go there. I'll be right behind you." They drove to the address Marge had given them. It was the same one. He'd been here all this time. So close. They knocked. The door was opened by a toddler, a little boy, maybe 3 years old, with dark curly hair and the same clear, kind eyes. He stared at them. "Hi," Ellie whispered. "Hi," the boy said. "Leo, don't open the door!" A young woman's voice, tired from inside. Just then, Daniel's truck pulled up. He got out, his face streaked with oil, and were those tears? "That's Leo," he said, walking up the path. "My son." He introduced them. The young woman was Maria, a neighbor who watched Leo while he worked. His wife, he explained, had died 2 years ago, a car accident. He's all I've got," Daniel said, his voice rough, as he scooped the little boy into his arms. Or he was. He looked at Arthur. He looked at Ellie. "Grandma?" the little boy asked, pointing at Ellie. Ellie just covered her mouth and nodded, tears streaming. They went inside. The apartment was small, clean, and filled with toys. For hours they talked. Daniel told them his life, foster homes, some good, some bad, aging out, getting the job at the garage, meeting his wife, Anna, the joy of Leo, the devastation of her loss. He had been alone. His whole life he had been profoundly, fundamentally alone. And Arthur and Ellie told him about Sarah. Not the runaway, but the little girl, the girl who loved horses, the girl who had a laugh that could fill a house, the girl who he looked so much like. Ellie read the letters aloud. Daniel listened to his mother's words, his eyes closed. My Danny. Graduating. He did it. I'm so proud. I wish I could show Mom and Dad. They'd be so proud. When she finished, there was a long, heavy silence. Daniel opened his eyes. He looked at Arthur. So, all that Elvis stuff, that was yours? Arthur let out a sound, a rusty, painful, wonderful sound, a laugh. No, son, he said, wiping his eyes. No, that was just junk. This, he motioned to the room, to Leo, to Daniel. This is the treasure. Weeks passed. Arthur and Ellie never went back to Ohio. They called a realtor from their motel room. They sold the house, the furniture, everything. They wired the money to their new bank in Reno. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They moved into the same apartment complex as Daniel, one building over, number 3C. The last image wasn't of a storage unit. It wasn't of a packed truck or a lonely highway. It was a park, a bright, cool Nevada evening. The sun was setting behind the purple mountains, turning the sky a brilliant, hopeful orange. Daniel was pushing Leo on a swing. Higher, Daddy, higher! Arthur and Ellie sat on a nearby bench, watching. Leo's laughter was clear and loud in the cooling air. Ellie's hands were resting in her lap. They weren't clutching a purse or a box of letters. They were just resting. Arthur reached over and took one, his rough, calloused palm covering her soft, wrinkled one. The hand that had found the bundle. The hand that had opened the trunk. And for the first time in 40 years, it wasn't empty.